Hello and welcome to another episode of Talking Bollocks. That's right, your favourite heavy metal podcast. With me, your favourite annoying host, Howard H. Smith. You may know me as lead singer in UK thrash band Acid Rain. I also host the official Motorhead podcast, The Motorcast. I also am involved in a podcast called The Reducer, new episode out now. And I does this here podcast, I do stand-up, it's all happening. I mean, this is the intro, isn't it? If you're a regular, you know this. If you're not, you don't. This is how the show always starts. It's that simple. And usually, the way it normally starts is at some point I say, and what's been happening in the world of metal since last we spoke? And it is that time because I just said it. First up, well, the major news. Blabbermouth has had a bit of a facelift. They've had a little bit of a redesign. That's the major news in the world of heavy metal at the moment. It's not, of course, it's not. But neither is Breaking in a Sequence, featuring former Korn drummer David Silveria. Leave Me Be music video available now. You see, yeah, that's not the major news, is it? I mean, it's just not. Good for him, still going, great drummer, but whatever. So I don't know why I even mentioned that, to be honest. I really don't. I think it's because it was the... because I keep an eye, you know, I sort of save links as they appear and stories catch my imagination or think, oh, you know, this is interesting. And I just store them away between podcasts. And then I'll, you know, come and pop all of the windows up. And the main story on Blabbermouth at the moment, well, when I went to do this, was that, you know, ex-Korn drummer's band Breaking in Sequence is releasing whatever. Anyway, brilliant. Awesome start to the podcast, right? This is what you tuned in for, isn't it? Hey, tuned in like it's a fucking radio. How old am I? Anyway, let's crack on. Let's get stuck in with more news that isn't about Blabbermouth or the old drummer from Korn. So, well, actually, I found myself having a little bit of a wander around Blabbermouth with the redesign, which is, you know, obviously what is intended. And having a look at the, you know, few stories and, various musicians weighing in on what Elon Musk could have spent the money on instead of Twitter, you know, and yeah, oh God, if I read another comment, he could have solved world hunger instead of buying Twitter. No, he couldn't. No individual can do that because basically it's government's jobs, and there you go. Anyway, fuck it, total tangent there. What I also found, and this is a bit of a tangent because it's not news, it's a review. And, you know, Blabbermouth aren't great at reviews. They sort of come and go here and there. But I found I found a review of Zeist, the upcoming Rammstein album. And I wasn't that impressed with the last Rammstein album, I must admit. And I'm a big fan. But this has given me cause for optimism, because it comes in at 7.5 and says it's pretty good. Okay, there we go. Fucking hell. Anyway, now, this is the kind of news story that when you read it, you just go, what the fuck? 1 killed, 4 injured in shooting during death metal concert in San Bernardino. This happened here we go. According to NBC Los Angeles, 1 person was killed and 4 others were injured in a shooting late Saturday night, April the 23rd, during a death metal concert at a bar in San Bernardino, California. Shooting took place around 9:30 p.m. on Saturday outside the Marquee Lounge, reportedly whilst Los Angeles death metal act Crawling Through Tartarus was performing. The band's vocalist, Matt Hulsberg, was allegedly hit by 2 rounds and subsequently underwent surgery. CBS Los Angeles reported 32-year-old James Vincent Dixon was pronounced dead at the scene. Police said all of the 4 victims listed were in stable condition on Monday. The investigation into the shooting remains under investigation, and no suspect or motive information was available. And yes, I did read that correctly. The investigation into the shooting remains under investigation. So I think they're saying the shooting remains under investigation, and not the investigation into the investigation about the shooting remains under investigation. Right. Anyway, as somebody who lives in the UK where guns are not legal, and I would imagine unless you're listening to this in North America, then guns are not legal where you are, hence you don't have regular shootings like this. Not that it's to do with the easy access to guns. Oh no, apparently that's nothing to do with it. Apparently guns being legal have nothing to do with the fact that the US has this massive gun problem. It's not because guns are legal. The fact that it is massively way ahead by thousands of % of every other country with gun deaths where guns are illegal. No, it's not down to guns being legal. But anyway, just reading that story, it's fucking ridiculous, isn't it? And I don't know about you, but when I'm reading that story, I'm thinking about being in the audience. Never mind being on stage, being in the audience, and the singer catching 2 rounds. It sounds so casual. The band's vocalist Matt Hulsberg was allegedly hit by 2 rounds and subsequently underwent surgery. It sounds just so everyday. Oh, he got a cold and then he stayed in, wrapped up warm, and he was fine again. He got hit by a couple of bullets, went to surgery, he's okay now. I mean, what the fuck? The absolute terror that audience and band must have been feeling during this incident it just does my absolute head in. And you know what? I think I'm gonna. Here are things forming as and when they happen in my brain. I am going to do my best to try and get hold of Matt Hulsberg, and find out how he is, and see if he wants to come on the podcast and have a chat. Poor bastard, that is not fun. Anyway, God. Right, yeah, let's crack on. Let's find something a little bit more light-hearted. Well, it's not light-hearted, but do you know what? This is fucking awesome. Dio's Holy Diver certified double platinum in the US. How fucking cool is that? Oh man, that really does just make me smile all these years later. Ronnie gone over a decade, but that is fucking awesome. And what an album. Very close to my heart, those first 2 Dio records. And to a certain extent, Sacred Heart as well. But mainly Holy Diver and The Last in Line, which were just fucking awesome at the time. They really were. And still stand up today. And here's... I didn't mean to do this, but here's something that doesn't stand up today. Ex-Iron Maiden singer Paul Di'Anno. I'm sorry. I am really sorry. That literally just happened. That happened as you heard it. Yes, I went into the story from how Dio Holy Diver still stands up today, and into a story about Paul Di'Anno being fitted for a custom leg brace after knee surgery, meaning he currently can't stand up. Yeah, I know. It's very, very poor taste on my part. But former Iron Maiden frontman Paul Di'Anno has been receiving... oh, right, okay, I'm not going to read this, actually, because that is actually pretty fucking gross. But let's just say... He's been in Croatia for 5 months and is looking at getting better. So let's hope the old Paul Di'Anno is back on stage at some point with some band, somewhere, sometime. This I really liked. Ex-Skid Row singer Tony Harnell praises band's new vocalist Eric Gronwall. I'm impressed. And I just think, that's really fucking cool. You know? That is really fucking cool. Invariably, you know what it's like. It's just like people just fucking throw shit at each other, isn't it? And not in this case. Not in this case at all. It's all, it's all gone very well. They're all, they're all very, very cool about it. I mean, apart from Seb Back, obviously. Getting down to it, he basically says it's really cool. And a smart and innovative idea getting this guy in. Because he auditioned for Swedish Idol back in 2009. Bloody hell. I didn't realise all of this. Well, there you go. But it's just really cool to hear, especially when it comes to vocalists, me being one of them. Hello. Just being really cool. And also having the good grace to say himself that his drinking was partly responsible for him quitting Skid Row, and explaining that he was basically really dumb and very unprofessional thing to do. And wow, that's just fucking class. I like Tony Harnell, I really do. Next up, Billy Howdrell. Well, that's a name that some of you might know and some of you may not know, but Billy Howdrell is, or Billy Howdrell, or there's all sorts of pronunciations. But anyway, he is the main dude in A Perfect Circle along with Maynard, and he's now decided to come out and release a solo album, and it's going to be called What Normal Was. Now, the reason I mention this, obviously, I do like Perfect Circle. I do like Tool, and I'm sure I'll have mentioned Billy Howdrell's band that he did before. I must have mentioned it loads of times, but they were called Ashes Divide, right? And the album is called Keep Telling Yourself You're All Right, or something like that. I genuinely, it is definitely called that. And it's a great album. If you can track it down online or anything like that, seriously, give it a spin. If you like sort of Tool-y, Perfect Circle-y kind of things, it really, really is worth getting into if you can get a copy of it. Ashes Divide. Honestly, great album. And next up, this is a bit of a strange one. Well, next up, I watched my mate's Dark Angel play a show in Houston, which was awesome. But more importantly, my final story here is a story about one of our gods, our metal gods. Metal gods! It is... I'm just in a fucking mood today. This is about Ozzy. And basically moving back to the UK. And there was a number of things that sort of drew my attention to this article. First up is obviously, it's the headline, because I heard Sharon, mouthing off that they would come back to the UK, but then I read this: Ozzy Osbourne reportedly applies for rehab wing at UK mansion, and I thought, what's going on here? So I said, well, Ozzy Osbourne, who revealed 2 years ago he was battling Parkinson's disease, has applied for permission for a rehabilitation wing at his historical Grade 2 listed home in Buckinghamshire, England. The extension will feature an abundance of stopping and sitting spaces, discreet grab rails and aids, and soft, non-slip surfaces, as well as a self-contained nurse's flat. There is also a pool house orangery, garden room, health and welfare exercise studio. Now, I don't know about you guys, but as I read that, I was thinking, right, okay, what really jumps out there is an abundance of stopping and sitting spaces, discreet grab rails and aids, a non-slip surface. Anyone think the Ozzy and Judas Priest tour is actually going to happen? Really? And that wasn't my first thought, okay? I have no skin in that game. I don't have tickets to go see the tour or anything like that. But you read that and you just think, that's some serious stuff he's having done there. And it's, like I said, it's clearly... a man who's struggling to stay on his feet and struggling with balance, and Parkinson's will do that. So, I just can't imagine. I can't imagine Ozzy being in a position to play a gig anytime soon. And I kind of hope he doesn't. But let's wait and see. But the story continues, and I mentioned last month that reported Ozzy and his wife Sharon were leaving Los Angeles and returning to their native UK due to rising taxes in California. The 73-year-old Sabbath frontman and his wife are going to be spending most of their time at their welder's house. We're leaving LA, he said, according to Mirror. We're a bit sad, but the tax is getting too much. I am sad because I really like staying and living there. He added, if they do the taxes better, I may come back. I don't know. I am taking my recording studio with me. I'm going to build a barn there and make my own studio at Welders. I will still be making music, and my band will still come over, and that's great. I just don't see gigs happening. I really don't. But hey, I haven't got any inside information. But what the fuck would I know? But again, reading that, I just kind of thought, and maybe it's because I'm not a Londoner. Sorry, I don't know why I was going to burst into song there. God, I spent a lot of time apologising for myself on this, haven't I? What really jumped out to me was, we are a bit sad, but the tax is getting too much. I am sad because I really, really like staying and living there. If they do the taxes better, then I may come back. I don't know. I mean, I'm reading this and I'm thinking, we are a bit sad, but tax is getting too much. I am sad because I really, really like staying and living there. You're 73. Yeah? Pay the tax and stay in LA. I mean, if that's what you really want at 73, then just do it. Don't be... I mean, how much money do you need? How much tax do you need to save? How much longer are you going to be on the planet to spend all of your money? Make life choices that make sense, not that make financial sense, that make life sense. God, check me out. I'm giving fucking life advice to Ozzy Osbourne, completely unwanted, unasked for, and will be unheard, I'm sure. But this is like, God, if this is like, my dad died when he was 73. Okay, that's as far as he made it. This is Ozzy Osbourne, who's done every drink and drug under the sun, still going. Dude, stay in LA. Spend your money. Why are you coming back? Honestly, it's just that's surely it's a time of, maybe there is other things at work here, and maybe that was just I don't know. All I'm saying is, if I've got Ozzy's kind of money and I'm 73 and living in LA, and I really like it there, then I'm staying there, and I'm not moving back to sodding, fucking, soaking, piss wet, fucking cold England. Certainly not at 73. And do you know what? If the taxes go up, I'm just going to go, well, I'm just going to have to fucking pay them, aren't I? But do you know what? I've got the money to do it, so why not? Anyway, that's enough life advice, pension advice, quality of life, and tax advice for Ozzy Osbourne for one podcast. Now it is time for the interview. And we have Ryan Shift of Cryptic Shift. Now, Cryptic Shift, they're a strange one. They are a UK, well, I'd say thrash band, but you're going to hear more. This is part of the interview about where Cryptic Shift live. They are... they're from Yorkshire. Get in. They've played with Acid Rain a number of times. Get in. And Ryan very kindly got in touch and booked us for the Leeds Boom show that was on our last date, our last tour that we did. So saw him very recently and said, "Hey, fancy coming on the podcast?" And he said yes. Now I say that Cryptic Shift are a strange one. They put their debut album out, Visitations from Enceladus. I think that's... he's going to say it later, so, I'm fucking this up now. But that came out on Blood Harvest Records, and it drew the attention of Metal Blade. And Metal Blade have now picked up Cryptic Shift for their next album. And that is... brilliant story. I mean, Metal Blade, UK band signing to Metal Blade, back in the day, God... that just never happened. So anyway, I had a bit of a chat with Ryan. We asked, we chatted all about the band, about the scene, about where they are and also about how they ended up being on Metal Blade. And here we are, having that very chat.
Hey.
Hello there, man.
How's it going?
Not bad. How's you?
Yeah, not bad at all.
Cool, man. Cool. So, what have you been up to since I saw you last? It's that seems like so long ago now.
Not too much, to be honest. I think things got quiet again with COVID.
Yeah.
Over when was it? You played in September, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so just kind of been busy. With Cryptic Shift, we played Damnation Festival, and that was awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty damn cool. Managing to playing a festival in your hometown, like in the middle,
especially
in the middle of a pandemic as well.
Yeah, we would have been the last one in Leeds as well.
Yeah, it's going over to Manchester,
it's moving
isn't
on
it?
Now.
Yeah, typical. We grow it in Leeds, and then it goes to Manchester and gets commercialised to fuck.
Yeah, it is what it is. If that's what they need to do to make it bigger,
yeah,
respect to them.
Well, yeah, and look, it's got to progress, hasn't it? I mean, look at Bloodstock. It started out at Derby Assembly Rooms. It's and now it's huge. You got to head somewhere.
Absolutely.
Got to head somewhere. So how's Boom holding up through all of this?
Yeah, it's not too bad, thankfully. A lot better than we were this time last year.
Yeah.
But I guess now it's waiting around for international bands to be able to come over.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see when that actually happens.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
It's just a complete different market, really. So.
Yeah, it is, and the thing is, for them as well, it's much more of a risk. So they've really got to figure out, what they're going to do, whether they're going to come over or not.
For sure.
Yeah. So anyway, look. First of all, thanks for an awesome show in September. Just couldn't believe it. It really was like the old days.
Hey, cheers.
And seeing a lot of old faces there, and just the whole vibe. It really was. It was kind of old school Leeds Duchess of York vibe, which it was amazing, man. It was like being 16 again.
That's sweet, man. That's good to hear.
Oh, honestly, and everybody I know who's there has said the same thing. But our paths originally crossed quite a few years back now, didn't they?
That's right.
You opened for us in Rebellion, wasn't it?
I think, we played Rebellion with you guys maybe twice now.
Yeah.
Because I know one time we played the Brudenell as well. It was like a weekend kind of thing.
Yeah. First time was 2017 at the Rebellion. And then I think you played with us there again, and then Brudenell. And we never really got a chance to even kind of say hello from what my memories are.
No, of course, man. You were probably too busy being Rockstar backstage and stuff.
Yeah, which I'm well known for. Yeah. But you guys have come from nowhere with a signing to Metal Blade, which I know we talked about that briefly back in September, but just remind me how all of that happened.
It did sound like, I don't know, man. I think people always expect more of a story, but one day I was just out and got an email, and it was from one of the European reps from Metal Blade, been like, "Are you interested in working with us?" And it's like, let me speak to the others first, and we just got talking from there. I think things worked out pretty good, to be honest. Really smooth as well, which is awesome, because going into it, we didn't really know what to expect.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Metal Blade is, you look at bands on Metal Blade, and once they sign for Metal Blade, they tend to, if they can, they tend to stay forever. So
Absolutely.
there must be something good going on there.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the best things, really. Signing with a label that you can kind of trust. You know, I've never really heard anything bad about Metal Blade. I know there's some older labels that I'm not going to bother naming that I've heard some really horror stories from certain bands, but it's never really been anything with Metal Blade, to be honest. So that's a really nice touch.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Brian has been around, you know, for ages, and he's like really visible as well, and you know, and out there doing interviews, and clearly a huge music fan himself, and I think kind of, you know, his ethos is what that label is built on, which is just, look, you know, let's do the right thing by everybody, and that way there's never any problems.
Absolutely.
And so what stage are you at with them yet? Because presumably, was it, you know, did they just offer to distribute what you already had out, or they wanted you to get new product, you know, get you in the studio ASAP?
Basically the latter. They're more focused on new stuff. They don't have any interest in the older stuff, which is fair enough, because I suppose when you're working with labels, they want to maintain as many rights as possible and all that kind of stuff, especially when they're investing, you know, money to help you out with stuff.
Yeah.
But, yeah, we're just in the process of writing the new record and stuff like that, which is kind of going all right. It's going steady away, but there's some level of, like, kind of pressure. It's not that like we don't believe that we're worrying about our kind of thing. It's kind of more just making sure that the album is 100% what we want it to be, rather than, you know, letting things maybe slide at like 95% or something like that.
Yeah.
Just with it being the first,
you know,
major album on Metal Blade and stuff.
Yeah, no, I absolutely get that, but you know how it goes, mate. You know, you'll think you're 100% happy with it, and then the following day after you've said yes, you'll be down to 95%.
Absolutely.
You know, you hear the mastering, and that might take it up a few percent, but then, do you know what? By it's been out and you've played the songs a bit, you're down to 85%, maybe 80%. And then it's all about, you know, what you're going to do next time. But I understand that, because of that. I mean, have you sort of signed a deal? Have they given you a budget to, you know, to work with, etc., or are you just producing? You're just going to deliver the album finished?
Sure, we got a budget and stuff like that. They're going to help us out with recording and even stuff like artwork and music video and stuff like that, which is nice, because obviously before that, being a completely independent band and having to finance everything ourselves, you know, that can be kind of restrictive, because everyone's obviously got their own life going on and stuff like that, and bills to pay and stuff. But now when there's an outside influence financially, that's a real good benefit, because it kind of like opens up the possibilities. Like beforehand, we always worked with the same recording engineer and stuff, obviously because we liked the guy and his work, but because, you know, he was a friend of ours and it was comfortable and we'd be able to get a quality recording. But now it's, we're thinking, where do we go to record this album? We could go anywhere, or we could work with anyone, you know, within good enough reason. So like we're going to be working with Bob Rock, for instance. I don't think that's going to happen for the next Cryptic Shift album. But
I hope not, mate, because it'll sound like a piece of shit. But you know, never mind.
Yeah, we'll get him on bass as well. Like, say goodbye to John for a few years. Yeah,
and go do it, and make your first gig off the back of a truck outside of a prison.
But yeah, no, it's nice just having options, I suppose, and
yeah, sure,
because everything's so new to us. Obviously, all these bands that have worked with bigger labels and stuff like that, especially bands that have been on Metal Blade for a while, probably know the drill and know how it kind of goes every album cycle. But for us, it's all kind of new and stuff, so that's exciting, you know.
Yeah, sure, and you know, I can understand the sort of, I can understand that pressure and that, you know, kind of like that it brings to the songwriting. But you've also got to remember that, like, you know, they've signed you on the basis of what you've done up to now. So,
for sure.
the next logical step is what they're interested in, and that's what you would have made whether they'd been around or not. But it does add a different dynamic to it for sure. But also, it's going to be interesting when it comes to recording as well, because presumably, like, you know, you've worked with somebody, like you said, who was your mate, you all felt comfortable with, and, you know, anybody who comes in to work on the next album is clearly going to be looking to sort of, you know, drive you on, and you might be in a situation where you're recording with somebody who's telling you, do you know what, you need to do that again, and you need to do it again and again and again, and that is when, you know, the feeling of, inverted commas, working for a label can really sort of hit.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
And it's but by the same token, I think it's like it depends. You know, the decision you make on who you're going to work with is largely all about, and it's got to be about, like, you know, you like what they've done, you like the sonics they've done, but also, like, speak to some of those bands and find out what they like to work with, and if you get a good vibe off that person, because it doesn't matter how good somebody is supposed to be in the industry, if you don't get a good vibe with them, then you're fucked.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's another thing to kind of be careful with as well, because like you said, there's obviously a lot of people that are out there that might not be as good as they think, because, you know, they've got, like, such a reputation from producing certain albums, but like you said, they might be not the best to work with and stuff. So
yeah,
but I guess that goes for all sorts, like, you know, booking agencies and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, because everybody's got their own agenda ultimately, and also if you've got a producer working on an album, and they know it's for a label that has a lot of bands, they want to kind of, you know, they want to use it as a showcase for themselves as well. It's like, you know, it brings some interesting factors into play. But have you got people in mind that you want to work with on the album?
Not directly. I know there's a producer in America called Zeus.
Ah, yeah.
He's done a lot of, like, modern metal stuff, especially the Revocation albums.
Yeah.
And I know that we're really into that sound, but again, he's based in the States, so
yeah.
And in an ideal world, we'd record with the engineer rather than send recordings over and have to, you know, try and direct the mix and all this kind of stuff over email or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, so whether or not it'll be too much of an expense to fly out to America and all this kind of stuff and record out there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one, that's for sure. But presumably that's, like, you know, for further down the line, you're just writing at the moment.
Right, yeah, for sure. And then, like I said before, right now it's just for making sure that the songs are as good as they can be, I suppose.
Right. So are you as far ahead as sort of, you've got your finished songs and you're just kind of sort of tweaking them now and it's more sort of pre-production, or is it still sort of early days putting those together?
It's still sort of early days, because of the nature of the songs being so long. We're kind of taking it one at a time. So we've got a song at the moment that's, you know, we can get from start to finish, but there's still parts that need solidifying and 100% working out and transitional stuff like that. Yeah. I guess that's what it is when writing, like, you know, like technical death thrash and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, and so what? And you know how to write a long song. I mean, you know, you're really in the sort of vector territory for length of tunes.
Absolutely.
What's it looking like on the new album then?
The shortest song's probably going to be around 8 minutes. Faster, playing a 25-minute long song live can go. No, it's all good. We're kind of just, you know, taking it. Right now, we're not working on the two longer songs. I think those ideas are still coming along with Xander, who writes most of the stuff. So right now, we're just kind of, you know, taking it as it comes, really, and seeing how it comes along.
Yeah,
so it's kind of cool because It's better to initially when we signed, we were a bit worried that they'd expect us to really, put us foot down and try and get an album out in like the next year or so. But thankfully, they've, been patient enough with us to be able to let us take us time with this stuff.
That is really cool. But then again, I suppose with the world being the way it is at the moment, there's not a massive rush because they can't really get you out on the back of it all over the place for a while yet.
Hey, they'll even struggle to get vinyl in production at this rate,
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're right there on that. But it is cool, like, to ask them how long can we take to write this, and the response was basically like, it's obviously not in everyone's best interest for it to take 5 years, but we're not going to say it needs to be done in, the immediate future. So it's cool as long as we don't, take forever.
Well, and like you say, that is really cool, especially being your first deal and being able to just kind of take it at your leisure in, when you're an independent band. That's really cool for them to just say, look, however long you need, because straight away you don't need that. You don't need that deadline. You don't need that kind of like, right, now you work for us and we want a finished album in our hands by this day.
Mm-hmm.
You want to keep that spirit of independence because it keeps the pressure off the songwriting.
Absolutely. And especially with our material, which, does take that time to develop, and we like to kind of go back and refine things. And like you said, maybe we'll lose 10% of certainty, like in a couple of months' time, and then have to build it back up or whatever,
Yeah. And it's interesting your the way you play, because I think we both sort of bonded over a love of Atheist when I saw you in September. So obviously there's multiple influences on your music. Where did it, as a drummer, where did you your journey start coming towards this kind of music?
Metal in general. I remember a relative passed me down Pantera, Vulgar Display of Power, and I remember listening to that for the first time, and that was like, because obviously I'm only 25, so when I was a kid, the radio music was still decent enough that I'd know what like rock music is and stuff like that. Bands like Green Day and Foo Fighters and stuff like that was on the radio, so hearing Pantera for the first time was like everything, the gain fully cranked on everything, and that was awesome. And when I was growing up, I used to watch a lot of pro wrestling and stuff, and just looking at the photos of Pantera on the Vulgar Display of Power album, like inlay, I was like, these guys look like wrestlers, this is cool. And then from then on, going back to the same relative and, getting passed out more music, and thankfully Kerrang and Scuzz TV was around when I was a kid, so I could watch that and stuff like that, and I'd start reading Metal Hammer and all this kind of stuff. But for me as a drummer, I think when I found like Slayer and started to kind of understand the style, the beats in that stuff, especially like the Rain in Blood album, that really, I don't know, blew my mind. Maybe because I wasn't good enough to kind of play guitar, because I started out playing guitar. I couldn't really play guitar that well, like to play Slayer stuff, but I could get my head around, just hitting the drums really hard and fast. To be able to like play along to, Angel of Death. I don't know how good it would sound if I went back and I watched myself play that stuff when I was, 13 years old, but,
Do you know what? That's amazing, because at the moment, with the podcast Patreon, I do a sort of review of a classic thrash album each month, and literally I released it like a couple of days, the latest one, and it's Rain in Blood, which
Awesome.
which for me is the greatest thrash metal album of all time. It's my favourite thrash metal album of all time. But also, and this is my point, given what you've just said, for me it is one of the most influential metal albums of all time, but it's the most influential thrash metal album of all time, because it didn't just influence thrash, it influenced other genres, like came off that album.
For sure.
You know, and then to hear that, like all these years after it came out, it's the album that had such a pivotal role in you know, your drumming. It's just, that's the power of that album, man.
For sure. I think that still remains true. Like you said, I kind of agree that it's like I've always said, like, Slayer are the ultimate thrash evil band. In my opinion, Slayer are the only band to do the whole Satan gimmick without it being a gimmick. Like, Slayer are just literally evil, straight from the depths of hell. Like, you know.
They turned Satan into a brand.
For sure.
Do you know what I mean? It's like
yeah, for sure.
Everybody else, it was like, you know, it was still like the little geezer with the with the pointy horns. But with Slayer, it's just kind of like, nah, do you know what? We're gonna merch Satan out, and it worked.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I mean, it without a doubt, such a pivotal band. So where did you go next? Once you were kind of like, you know, right, I think I might be able to play pretty fast. Was it like, right, I'm going to find more fast stuff, or what happened?
Around that time, I was just kind of getting into thrash in general. So, you know, I remember one of the first bands I was ever in used to cover Seasons in the Abyss, for example. So I was always playing around with people who were into similar music. So it was just whether or not we were, you know, capable enough to be able to play this stuff. I struggle still now to play some of the, like, Dark Angel material, for instance. So that was kind of off the books at this point. But it was kind of cool. Seeing a lot of bands around this time was kind of impressionable on me as well, because this is like my first time. I remember the first thrash show I ever went to was Creator at the Ritz with Evil and Zentrix on the Phantom Antichrist tour.
Right.
And that really, like, blew me away. I think I was like 16 at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, going to a show, like, you know, without any parents or anything, in another city, and going to a thrash show, and, you know, and the adrenaline of, you know, the pit and stuff like that was really good. That really stuck with me, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's the kind of experience, and funnily enough, it might have been years and years and years ago for me, but I absolutely remember that feeling. And there's something about that feeling of being in a thrash band and then going to see thrash live. It's just kind of like you get a massive buzz for the gig, but you also get a massive buzz for, I want to do that even more now.
For sure.
Yeah.
And like, now, I kind of feel like I don't know if it's because I've, you know, been going to shows for so long. Maybe, I don't know how you feel, because you've always been going for much longer than me, but that there's only certain bands that really carry that energy. And for me, it's one of the main ones, Exodus. Every time I see Exodus, no matter how old they are or how long they've been going, or who's playing with them, because I know not always as, you know, the same members, but Exodus every time completely blow me away and really rekindle that feeling that you just spoke on, that this is awesome, you know?
Yeah. I think it's funny you should say that. I think we all have that band. We all have that. For me, it was Slayer. It was like, there's that band that if they're coming to town, you buy a ticket, and it doesn't matter whether it's the fourth time they've been round in the last 18 months. It doesn't matter if the new album's good, bad, or indifferent. It's like, there's that band where they're coming to town, I get a ticket, End of.
Did you go to Slayer's last tour? Well, of course
Yes.
you did. I
Yeah. No, I did. I went to the mass funeral that was Slayer at Wembley Arena, which was sold out.
Right, I bet that was crazy.
It was, man, but it was. There was definitely. I mean, I went with my mate who I've seen Slayer with, 15, 17, God knows how many times, and we absolutely loved it. But to think it was the last time that we were going to be stood there singing along to Skeletons of Society or singing along to, South of Heaven or whatever. It was great fun, but there was, like, in the background, just this feeling of, I can't believe it's the last time we're going to do this.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, it really was the end of an era. And walking away from the show that night, there was just, like, nobody kind of... Normally it's kind of raucous and people are shouting Slayer and there's a real buzz, but instead it was like walking away from a mass funeral. It was just really quiet.
Right, that's how I felt. I saw him in Manchester, same tour.
Yeah,
and it was very similar. I'm assuming he did this at almost every show. But when the show was over and everyone kind of left the stage, other than Tom Araya, who kind of just looked out.
Yeah,
that was definitely a moment.
It really was, because the house lights were on by then. And normally house lights on, the first thing you look at is like, right, to see who's leaving, see how busy the exits are. And the house lights came on and you kind of look around, no one's going anywhere, because this is the last chance that you're going to get to thank Tom Araya for all those years.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
And it was proper emotional, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And it made me kind of realise, like, Slayer, for me at least, one of the first classic bands to go, like, say goodbye, we're done.
Yeah.
And it made me realise that, in 10 years' time, I'm hopefully still around and Cryptic Shift is still going to be around, but whether or not all these old classic bands are still going to be around,
yeah,
which takes up a majority of the big bands in the scene still.
Yeah.
So I'm like thinking, I wonder what's going to happen to the bands our age and what the scene's going to be like for us when all these big bands have gone. And are we going to become the big bands, or are we going to be restricted to remaining as a smaller kind of group?
Yeah, no, look, it's an interesting point, because I mean, you look now and you think, right, okay, well, who's in tier 2? Do you know what I mean? Who's looking to get promoted into the the big 4 or the big 10 or whatever, and not just thrash, but so you look at it and you think, well, I think kind of Parkway Drive, Mastodon, Machine Head,
right.
These are bands that could are kind of second tier headliners for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I mean, compared to bands that they would, inverted commas, be looking to replace at the moment, they're nowhere near.
Nowhere near. And the thing is, without bands like Slayer to take Mastodon on tour and put them on them bigger stages,
yeah,
there's obviously you don't know if people are going to check out these bands and stuff like that. Yeah,
yeah. And it's noticeable as well that as awesome as the second wave of thrash is, the kind of pecking order still hasn't changed. You've still got the big one, Metallica, then another 3 who've all sold platinum but are nowhere near as big as Metallica, and then you've got that gap again to Testament, Exodus, Death Angel, etc. And that's the way it's always been. Do you know what I mean? I'm not seeing like all of a sudden, like Testament aren't playing arenas all of a sudden. It doesn't work like that.
Well, I'd argue that like Testament and Exodus and stuff like that are probably doing probably the bigger now than they've ever been, really.
Oh, without a doubt. Well, not bigger than they've ever been, because they did huge city hall tours back in the day, and also, you know, just from a selling numbers worldwide. But they're still in it, you know, they're still in rude health. I mean, you know, Testament are a lot better off now than they were 10 or 20 years ago.
For sure.
But yeah, it's just that kind of, is anyone going to come through? And of course they're not, because we're talking about like the biggest band metal's ever seen, and then kind of like, you know, three of their sort of siblings, and everybody else is kind of like down at that next level. But it's just going to be interesting to see on the harder side of things how it all progresses, you know, and if bands like, you know, because the thing is, I always think of Mastodon as a harder edged band, whereas now they're probably not quite as hard, but it's still kind of musically challenging, but doesn't really kind of relate to thrash in any way.
Absolutely.
You know, which they did. Sorry, go on.
Well, I was just going to speak on that. What's interesting to me as well is that obviously there's the live music side of things, where when bands like, you know, all these bands retire and stuff, who's going to take that step? The same somewhat applies for labels as well, which is interesting. Good because point. When all these big bands, obviously the bigger bands tend to be the ones that have been going for the longest and stuff. So when they stop producing new material, you know, obviously these labels still the businesses, so obviously they rely on a lot of money to be made and stuff to make it all work and stuff like that. And not to say that certain labels will rely on certain size bands to make so much money that no doubt gets filtered down to the smaller bands. I wonder how it'll be when, you know, I think it's just going to flip the industry on its head a little bit, you know.
Yeah, you might be right. You might be right. It's going to be interesting to see, because there does seem to be enough bands coming through that are keeping the scene alive, like your good selves, for instance. I mean, you know, playing the kind of music that you do, it must have been, you know, was it difficult to get a start in the local area? Was there much of a scene that you could kind of latch onto, or did you think, or was it a case of like, well, we're just going to do what we do and create our own scene?
For us, I guess, originally we started playing just kind of around the nationwide thrash scene and stuff, you know, making friends with those bands and all that kind of stuff, but no one, every now and then there'd be an opportunity to support, you know, bigger acts like themselves, and Pestilence, Sacred Reich, you know, we supported and stuff early on, and that was always cool. But for the most part, I think, for Cryptic Shift at least, a lot of our audience is overseas. A lot of our fan base is mainly in America, to be honest, right. Which is cool.
Yeah, but for the
as for the UK, I still think, even though we're Simon Metal Blade and stuff like that, and we make, you know, as albums well worldwide, I still think in the UK we're a little bit under the radar still, which is quite cool.
I think you're right, mate. I really do. I mean, but I get it as well, because your music does sound, I don't know, it doesn't sound very sort of UK, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely, no, I get that.
You know,
and I think,
go on.
Yeah, the stuff that you said quite different to the other stuff that comes from here, and I think because there's such a broader range of influences, you know. To be honest, if anything, we should sound like a Canadian band, because as main influences really are like Gorguts, yeah, you know, all those kind of like technical bands. So,
well, also indirectly, there's some Voivod influence in there as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's what I was saying. Really, like Voivod's probably maybe the biggest influence.
Yeah, and that's why I like your music. Simple as that, because I can I can like feed off that VOD vibe, which is kind of like really, really rare.
Well, for sure. Even like the Outer Limits, like that album, it's not strictly the thrash stuff that we're super into, you know.
Oh, the Jack Luminous, what a fucking song!
Oh, of course.
I mean, you're absolutely right. You've because everybody says what a great period of albums it was between, you know, Killing Technology, Dimension Hatros, Nothing Face. After Nothing Face, Angel Rat was all right, but then they were then absolutely bang on form on the Outer Limits.
Yeah, and it's kind of cool because obviously, like, music kind of took a change as well as culture at that time. So a lot of these like thrash bands or metal bands were trying the sound that, you know, that kind of like, I don't want to say stadium rock, but it's kind of how it is.
Yeah.
But with Voivod, it's so sincere and just, yeah, this is just Voivod like coming out, you know, it sounds great.
Yeah. I think the reason why the Outer Limits has, like, there seems to be so much sort of suspicion around that album is that for a VOD album, it's probably the cleanest production. Well, it's definitely the cleanest production they'd had up to that point. It was the most sort of mainstream production that they'd had at that point. And I think people sort of confused that for it being a mainstream album, because
no, for sure,
it still contains all of the weirdness. It's just it's an absolutely brilliant album. And as I'm sure you're aware, when they went to tour that album, their two support bands were Soundgarden and Faith No More.
Exactly. This was in like 93 as well, right?
I can't remember the year on it, but it is early 90s, isn't it? It's 93, 94, something like that.
Yeah.
I've got the CD in my cabinet, but it's just that little bit too far to walk. But yeah, no, I mean,
we'll say it's 93.
yeah. And you being a drummer, then, like, would you agree with me that Away is one of the most underrated drummers of any fucking genre of metal?
For sure. Even as a punk drummer, I think he's underrated.
Yeah,
like the energy in the D beat, especially on Killing Technology.
Yeah. There we go. Right, mate. I'm just digging out the Outer Limits so we can put it to rest. 93. Good shout. 93.
93.
Spot
so
on.
I don't know what else was coming out around that time. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I don't really remember it being anything too great, at least in comparison to Limits.
Yeah, but it was a weird old time in music around that time, though, because, like you say, you know, they go on tour and they've got Soundgarden and Faith No More supporting them, and then we were in that little era of this is a weird time, and then all of a sudden, within 18 months, bands like Soundgarden and Faith No More would be selling shit tons of records, and Voivod would be getting dropped.
Mm-hmm. How was that in the UK?
It was. I mean, I was kind of like, I was heading out of music by then. Well, was I really? No, to be honest, I was doing something with a band called Strange Thing in Newcastle, so it was still a bit thrashy. But we also had a saxophone player, and
nice.
It was kind of it was kind of like Fishbone meets Primus. And
there's that Exodus album around the time that has that kind of vibe.
Oh shit! Which one is that?
Not
Force of Habit.
It's the one after Impact. It is Force of Habit, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, you might be right.
I know there's definitely one track on there that has like some horns player, and I just remember hearing it for the first time and thinking like, what the hell is going on here?
Well, it's like when Sacred Reich put 31 Flavors on The American Way. And it was like, it's starting to seep in now.
Yeah.
and for a while there, we did have a sort of burgeoning funk metal scene in the UK, but it never really took off, to be honest.
That's cool.
And then
I don't know too much about like the UK thrash history. I've got that Contract in Blood, that book.
Oh well, I ain't got my head. You know all you need to know then if you've got that.
Well, I ain't put the time in to get through it yet, but
right. Well, it's
pretty good.
Well, basically, it's the same thing that happened with the American scene, which is stop selling records. Really, I mean, we all split. We announced we were splitting up. Sabbath announced they were splitting up the following week, and 2 weeks after that, Onslaught announced they'd split.
Damn.
And it was just. When you're part of a scene and the scene goes down, then you go down with it.
No, absolutely.
And I mean, you look at the big four, because they were all originators, they were able to keep going. But pretty much every other thrash band went into mothballs or packed up.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, other than Metallica, I'd say the bands in the big four they're still kind of like dipped a bit, I'd imagine. Yeah,
without a doubt. I mean, you look at Anthrax's career, there's years there where
sure.
Every new album is on a new label. And I mean, to this day, I think Scott Ian struggles to get his head around who owns the music to some of those albums. And yeah, it was struggling to survive, and that's why I've always got a huge amount of respect for bands also like Sodom and like Creator, who kept going through those years on a much smaller fan base.
Absolutely.
So
did the same thing happen to Testament as well?
Well, Testament,
'cause I know they kind of kept going.
Yeah, they did, and it's a weird one because the first album Gene plays on when he came back, that's not even supposed to be a Testament album. They all met up and they wrote that album as under a different band name, and then it came to shopping it, and basically one label said, "Look, we'll give you X amount of money if you put it out under the name Testament," and it was such good money they went, "Yeah, all right then." So. Yeah. So you've got bands sort of trying to get away from that and do something different and getting pulled back to it, and then you've got other bands just plugging away hoping to make a living. I mean, this is why so many bands went into mothballs. Bands like Sacred Reich, etc. Everybody went into mothballs because there was nothing doing. I mean, the genre almost sort of turned its gun on itself. There's a lot of people that say that death metal killed thrash, but I think it's more a case of thrash just fucking committed suicide. It choked to death on all of its songs about don't commit suicide and look after the planet because it's dying, and it's just there was no evolution whatsoever. Everybody had a ballad on their album, everybody had a song about Mother Earth, and everybody's band started shifting less records, and that was that. And at the same time, you had death metal coming up, which was also not just staying as death metal. Death metal was coming up, but splintering into different genres as it grew itself. And that was fucking exciting. And thrash, all of a sudden, within a few years of burning really brightly, thrash was just basically just a bit fucking boring, really.
That's, I kind of like the thing. Everything's all established, really.
I'm losing you. Oh, yeah, now you're back.
Hey, all right, cool. I was just saying that about the scene now, the diversity is already kind of there.
Yeah.
So, I don't, obviously, no one really saw what was coming with the metal scene back then, but there's always now going to be an audience for thrash and death metal music, hopefully.
No, I think you're right.
I think
cool. You're right. I think you're right because it's the way that heavy metal, the tree of life has grown. You look at all the different roots and all the different genres, and the more you have, the more you are likely to proliferate the genres. And basically, if you imagine the tree of metal, once upon a time it had, it had two roots. It had heavy metal and it had thrash metal. Well, that's not sustainable, and it wasn't. But now it's got so many roots with so many genres that I think it's guaranteed to go on into the future, and certainly genres like thrash, death, etc. All the main ones. They're here for life now.
That's like, obviously, Gene Hoglan, for instance, recently leaving Testament to go back and do a new Dark Angel album after 31 years.
Yeah,
and he's finally returning to doing another Dark Angel record, and that's awesome to me. That for Gene, 31 years later, he's been able to go,
yeah,
you know what, I'm going to go back.
Yeah, no, it is awesome. I mean, he's an awesome drummer. He's an awesome chap. I mean, we toured with him in '89 on the Leave Scars tour.
I think I've seen footage of that one.
Oh man, honestly, every night it was just, they were awesome. Absolutely.
Is that the show? I know there's one Acid Rain show. I think it's from, it might be like Hammersmith in London or something.
Ah, no.
Like,
I know.
Within like 10 seconds of the set, you're like, whoa, why are you not letting people stage dive?
Right, yeah. No, that's the Hippodrome show. But there's very few vids of us with Dark Angel because it was all out in Europe. We only did the European dates. Cool. We didn't do the UK dates. But it was awesome, man. Absolutely awesome. And they were just like an incredible band. And I mean, one of the lost thrash metal classics is Time Does Not Heal, which is just
yeah, absolutely.
It's a phenomenal album. Pain's Invention Madness. Fucking what?
Yeah, that's like one of my favorite all out, maybe even my favorite like thrash album. That's not an obvious choice,
Yeah. Well, that's an awesome choice, man, because that album's brutal. The riffing on it, even the lyrics are heavy.
It's for real, and it's cool that Gene wrote a lot of it.
Yeah,
like lyrically and the riffs, and even obviously the drumming and stuff. And like since then, I don't know if Gene has performed with a band where he's had as much freedom as he had on the album, because he's always kind of working with or for someone.
Yes. Yeah.
And there's a big fan of him, like he's probably my favourite drummer. To hear that album and be like, this is Gene Hoglan's complete creative effort. That's awesome,
Well, the thing with Gene as well is that he's involved in Dark Angel songs from the ground up, so it's got his influences all over it. And I know, I mean, I've interviewed Gene loads while he's been in Testament, when he's been doing the Death to All stuff, and it's always good to catch up with him. And last time he was here with Testament, I got the feeling that he was ready to do something new. Now that's not in any way, I'm not saying anything bad about Testament.
Sure.
But I just got a kind of feeling off him that I was talking to him about, he seemed to have more enthusiasm for things that weren't Testament than Testament. But then again, that can be a feature of actually being on the road with that band at that time, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But he's always had his fingers in pies, but I know going back and doing another Dark Angel album is really what they wanted to do, because I know Gene still feels like he was cheated out of doing a follow-up to Time Does Not Heal. So this is something that they've been wanting to do for a long time.
No, awesome. That's I'm looking forward to that one quite a lot.
Yeah, no, I am as well.
Also, like Dark Angel coming back is good for me, because that real aggressive death thrash sound I know Time Does Not Heal isn't necessarily as death thrash as what death thrash became, but I think as a starting point, as a foundation for that style, like Time Does Not Heal and Demolition Hammer, Epidemic of Violence. Those two records are so brutal.
Well, it's funny you should mention that. It's funny you should mention that because I think it was 2018. I went to the Lord of the Lands where Dark Angel were headlining and Demolition Hammer were on the bill as well.
Yeah, right. I really wanted to go to that, but I can't remember why I didn't go. Did you know? Is that the year Cannabis Corpse played? Do you know?
No, it isn't. No.
All right, cool.
But it was it was great. I mean, it was great to see the band again. I mean, I hadn't seen the other members. I mean, seen Gene quite a lot, but I hadn't seen the other members for 30 years. So
absolutely.
So it was awesome to see those guys, and I tell you what, still put in an absolutely cracking show as well.
Right, I saw them at Bloodstock the year they got back together, and I think they came over. It was I think Gene played with Death to All on the same day.
Yeah.
But seeing Dark Angel at Bloodstock was awesome.
Yeah, man. I mean, they're an awesome live band, and like you say, with another album to come back as well. That is just very excited. What about the new Violence track? Are Violence a band that you're aware of at all?
Violence, obviously, yeah, but I haven't actually heard the new track yet.
Right, so it's not.
And I'm pretty sure it's on Metal Blade, right?
It is, yes.
Yeah, I should probably check it out then. I don't know if I'm expected to.
Yeah,
that's in my job description now.
No worries, I definitely won't be tagging the label when I put this one out. Oh man, well look,
cool.
Look, man, I really appreciate your time, Ryan. It's really been good to have a chat, and look, let's talk about doing some shows together in the future as well. Thank you so much for your time. Stay in touch.
Hey, you too, man.
Will do. And with that, like thrash metal ships in the night, we were gone. We passed, and that was that. They Cryptic have just toured as well, and they're just staying busy. And I wish them the best of luck. An original, a very original band, certainly from the UK. On first listen, to my old ears, don't sound like a UK band at all. But top bunch of lads. Played with them a few times. Great bunch of lads, and I just wish him the best of luck flying the flag for British metal and Yorkshire metal as well. So all it goes to say is thank you to my guest, Ryan. Thank you to you for listening, the listener. Hello. That's what your name is, so you have to listen if you're called a listener. And that's it. That is the end of another Talking Bollocks podcast. All that remains is to thank you for listening, and obviously the usual reminders to get people to subscribe and share the podcast and all the rest of it. But you know what? I don't actually see anyone fucking doing that. Certainly not on social media. There's the odd retweet here and there or like whatever, but guys, really think you could step your game up on social media. I really do. But if you want to get involved with part of the conversation, and just have a laugh online. But then again, not everyone's thing, is it? I mean, just because you like a podcast doesn't mean you necessarily want to interact with it on social media. And also, you might not have the time. I mean, I seem to spend half my life online, so it's kind of natural, but totally get it if it isn't for you. So there you go. I've managed to talk myself around from moaning that people aren't doing enough online to then realising that you should probably shut the fuck up, Howard, because people have got better things to do. Fair enough. But anyway, it's always a pleasure. It is never a chore, and there is more metal coming your way, as always, from these here podcasts. Hope you like them. I'm going to put a link to the Reducer podcast in the description as well, because, maybe some of you like it, maybe some of you won't. I mean, the current episode is about football club ownership, so that might put you off. But then again, the previous episode was top 10 cunts. So there you go. You couldn't be more talking bollocks relevant. Well, not really, apart from the fact that I haven't said cunt on the podcast for quite a while. And having said cunt earlier, although it was out of context because I was referring to top 10 cunts, the podcast. But yeah, so there you go. Cunt. Look after yourself.